Hi, I'm Bob. Welcome back to the tutorial on solving the exercises in Professor Jeffrey Perloff's textbook, Microeconomics Theory and Applications with Calculus, the 5th edition. We have reached section 6 of chapter 17, which covers rivalry and exclusion. I hope the solutions help you better understand the textbook. Here's exercise 6.1. List 3 examples of goods that do not fit neatly into the categories in table 17.3 because they are not strictly rivalrous or exclusive. Table 17.3 in the textbook shows the 4 categories of goods classified by whether they have the properties of rivalry and exclusion. A good is rivalrous if only one person can consume it. After you eat an apple, for example, no other people can consume the apple. It also means other people's utility of using that good is affected. For example, when you drive on a highway, it may reduce other drivers' satisfaction driving on the same road. Exclusion means the owner of a good can prevent others from consuming it. For example, your car is exclusive because you can lock it and no one else can use it. A gym is also subject to exclusion because you have to pay to enter. Based on rivalry and exclusion, economists classify goods into 4 categories: private goods, open access common properties, club goods, and public goods. The following are 3 goods that are not strictly rivalrous or exclusive. Some beaches have an entrance for cars and sell tickets at the entrance. It prevents cars without tickets from entering the beach. It has the property of exclusion. But people may walk onto the beach for free. So the beaches are not strictly exclusive. Some highways have little traffic in the early morning. One driver using the highway does not affect other drivers. So the highway is not rivalrous at that moment. However, during rush hour, the same highway may be subject to rivalry because it is congested by many cars, and drivers' utility will be affected by each other. A third example is the pickleball courts in my neighborhood park. The pickleball courts are always empty on weekdays, but you have to wait in line on weekends. Like some highways, the rivalry property of the pickleball courts depends on time. Let's solve exercise 6.2. Are heavily used bridges, such as the Bay Bridge, Brooklyn Bridge, and Golden Gate Bridge, commons? If so, what can be done to mitigate externality problems? An open access common property is an unregulated resource that is non-exclusive but rival. Everyone has free access and an equal right to exploit the resource, but using that resource may cause negative externality and reduce other people's utility. Heavily used bridges are common property because they are non-exclusive and rivalrous. The most serious problem with open access common property is overusing the common resources. The reason is that people do not consider the negative externality cost of their action, resulting in a competitive equilibrium quantity that is higher than the social optimum. Generally speaking, three approaches can be made to mitigate externality problems: clearly define property rights, restrict access, and tax users. To prevent overuse of the bridges, the government can collect tolls to use the bridges. The drivers have to bear additional costs of the negative externalities they cause, so they internalize the externality. An alternative is to limit the number of vehicles that can use the bridges by the rule that cars with license plates ending in an odd number are allowed to drive only on odd-numbered days, while those with even-numbered plates are restricted to even-numbered days. Let's answer exercise 6.3. States and cities are increasingly using tolls on express lanes to reduce highway congestion. The tolls increase as traffic builds. However, Los Angeles and Miami have put caps on tolls, which limit the maximum amount of toll they can pay. So while a toll based on the amount of traffic can increase welfare, so the effect of a cap on the toll. The supply and demand diagram shows a driver's private demand curve D for using the bridges. It does not include the negative externality of congestion caused by that driver. The social demand curve D' considers the negative externality, which shifts the private demand curve downward. The private equilibrium quantity of using the bridges, QP, is higher than the socially optimal quantity, QS, leading to a Debye loss of the red triangle area. The toll will force the driver to internalize the externality and shift the private demand curve downwards to the social demand curve. The Debye loss is reduced, and social welfare increases. If a cap is put on the toll, the private demand curve shifts down for a shorter distance to D double prime. The equilibrium quantity is Q tilde, which results in a Debye loss of the small blue triangle area. Welfare improves compared to no regulation, but the cap weakens the effect of the toll. Let's address exercise 6.4. To prevent overfishing, could one set a tax on fish or on boats? Explain and illustrate with a graph. Fisheries are open access common property. As the supply and demand diagram shows, the private marginal cost of fishing does not consider the negative externality it imposes on future generations. The private competitive equilibrium quantity of fish is QP. The social marginal cost, MCS, is the sum of the private marginal cost, MCP, and the externality marginal cost, MCE. The socially optimal quantity of fish caught should be QS. The private equilibrium quantity is greater than the social optimum, leading to a debit loss of the red triangle area. To alleviate the loss, the government can impose a tax on fish. It increases the marginal cost of each unit of fish caught, so it can rotate and shift the private marginal cost curve towards the social marginal cost curve, resulting in the social optimum. Notice that it is about the change in the marginal cost, how to increase the private marginal cost and make it coincide with the social marginal cost. It is not about the change in the fixed cost. To set a tax on boats is to increase the fixed cost of fishing. It will not change the fisherman's behavior because the marginal cost of each unit of fish is unchanged. Let's go to exercise 6.5. After Hurricane Katrina destroyed much of New Orleans, the Louisiana Row Home Rebuilding Grant Program helped individuals pay for rebuilding their homes. Researchers estimated that each additional rebuilt home generated positive externalities of $4,950 to other people who wanted to rebuild their homes but weren't eligible for the grant. Use a supply and demand figure to illustrate how the grant affected the market for rebuilding homes. Rebuilt homes have a positive externality to nearby homes because they increase the value of the houses in the same area. In the market for rebuilding homes, the willingness to pay curve or demand curve is D without the grant. The grant has a positive externality effect, shifting the demand curve upward to D'. The after-grant equilibrium quantity of rebuilt homes is Q', and the after-grant equilibrium price is P'. The grant raises the equilibrium quantity and price. Let's solve exercise 6.6. You and your roommate have a stack of dirty dishes in the sink. Either of you would wash the dishes if the decision were up to you. However, neither will do it in the expectation that the other will deal with the mess. Explain how this example illustrates the problem of public goods and free riding. Public goods are non-rival and non-exclusive. Individuals who provide public goods have a positive externality to others. Other people who benefit from the positive externality have no incentive to pay for it because they will not be excluded from consuming it. It is called the problem of free riding, benefiting from a positive externality without paying. In this example, the clean dishes and kitchen environment are public goods. If one roommate cleans the dishes, the other roommate benefits from it. The one who cleans the dishes provides a positive externality to others. Other roommates are free riders who benefit from clean dishes and kitchen environment without making any effort. Let's find the answer to exercise 6.7. Do publishers sell the optimal number of intermediate microeconomics textbooks? Discussed in terms of public goods, rivalry, and exclusion. Textbooks, to a certain extent, are considered public goods. The books themselves are mostly private goods once you purchase them. However, you can read and borrow textbooks in libraries without paying for them. Moreover, the knowledge inside the textbooks is non-rival. Everyone can learn microeconomics. One student who learns microeconomics will not affect other students who study it. It is also non-exclusive because you cannot stop others from learning microeconomics. Public goods are always underprovided because the firms that provide positive externality cannot profit from the free riders. Publishers sell textbooks lower than the socially optimal number. Let's go to exercise 6.8. A pandemic influenza that kills 2 million or more people could also cause annual income loss of 4% to 5% of global national income. Using the concepts in this chapter, explain the effects of a pandemic. Is government intervention necessary to help prevent pandemics? Or can society rely solely on markets? The pandemic causes damage to people's health, and it slows down the economy. An effective way to prevent pandemics is vaccination. Vaccination is a public good. A vaccinated individual provides a positive externality to others, lowering their probability of getting the disease. Unvaccinated people in the community are free riders. They benefit from the positive externality provided by the vaccinated people. Like other public goods, the private provision of vaccines tends to be lower than the social optimum. Government intervention is necessary. The government should subsidize private providers, or the government, rather than the market, should provide vaccines. Let's address exercise 6.9. According to the application, what's their beef? Collective generic advertising produces $5.67 in additional marginal revenue for every dollar contributed by producers. Is the industry advertising optimally? Explain. No, the advertising is not optimal because the marginal revenue is higher than the marginal cost at the current level of advertising. In other words, the marginal profit is positive. Increasing the amount of advertising can increase profit until the marginal profit reaches zero. Let's tackle exercise 6.10. Guards patrolling a mall protect the mall's two stores. The electronics store's demand curve for guards is greater at all prices than that of the ice cream parlor. The marginal cost of a guard is $10 per hour. Use a diagram to show the equilibrium and compare that to the socially optimal equilibrium. Now suppose that the mall's owner will provide a subsidy of S per hour per guard. Show in your graph the optimal S that leads to the socially optimal outcome for the two stores. The guard patrolling is a public good for the two stores in the shopping mall. D1 is the ice cream parlor's demand curve for guard service. D2 is the electronics store's demand curve. D is the social demand curve, which is the vertical sum of the two stores' individual demand curves. The socially optimal equilibrium is ES, where the social marginal cost equals the social willingness to pay. In the social optimum, the shopping mall purchases QS hours of guard service. However, if the two stores act independently, they buy only QP hours of service at the market equilibrium EP. The electronics store buys QP, which is determined by the intersection of its individual demand curve and the supply curve. The ice cream parlor is a free rider and benefits from the guard service without paying, because guard patrolling is a public good. Thus, the competitive market provides less guard service than the socially optimal level. Suppose the mall's owner offers a subsidy of S per hour per guard. It shifts the electronics store's demand curve to the right. An optimal subsidy leads the demand curve to D2 prime. It goes through the social optimum ES. The intersection of the supply curve and D2 prime determines the new market equilibrium, which coincides with the social optimum ES. The market equilibrium quantity equals the socially optimum quantity QS. Let's solve exercise 6.11. Two tenants of a mall are protected by the guard service Q. The number of guards per hour demanded by the electronics store is Q1 equals A1 plus B1 times P, where P is the price of 1 hour of guard services. The ice cream parlor's demand is Q2 equals A2 plus B2 times Q. What is the social demand for this service? The guard service is a public good for the two stores in the shopping mall. Because a public good lacks rivalry and exclusion, stores can benefit from the guard service at the same time. The social demand curve or social willingness to pay curve for the guard service is the vertical sum of each individual demand curve. The electronics store and the ice cream parlor's demand functions are as follows. The social demand function is P equals P1 plus P2. Notice that if Q ranges between A1 and A2, the social demand curve is part of the electronics store's demand curve. Let's go to exercise 6.12. In the analysis of the optimal level of a public good, suppose that each person's utility function is quasi-linear, so that the optimal G is unique and independent of P1 and P2 if society has adequate resources. The optimal provision of a public good satisfies equation 17.4 in the textbook, where G is the socially optimal quantity of the public good. P1 and P2 are optimal quantities of private goods. U1 and U2 are each individual's utility. For the quasi-linear utility functions, we can simplify the equation. Once the utility functions are specified, their first derivatives with respect to the public good G can be computed, and they are functions of only G. Thus, the socially optimal provision of the public good is unique and independent of the two private goods. From the budget constraint equation 17.7, we know that the sum of budgets should be greater than G. Let's answer exercise 6.13. Anna and Bess are assigned to write a joint paper within a 24-hour period about the Pareto optimal provision of public goods. Let A denote the number of hours that Anna contributes to the project, and B the number of hours that Bess contributes. The numeric grade that Anna and Bess earn is a function of A and B. If Anna contributes 8 hours, then she has 24 minus 8 hours in the day of leisure. Anna's utility function is UA equals 23 times log A plus B plus log 24 minus A. And Bess' utility function is UB equals 23 times log A plus B plus log 24 minus B. If they choose the hours to contribute simultaneously and independently, what is the Nash equilibrium number of hours that each will provide? What is the number of hours each should contribute to the project that maximizes the sum of their utilities? We solve the problems in 2 steps. In the first step, we find the Nash equilibrium number of hours each person provides if they act simultaneously and independently. They will maximize their own utility, ignoring other people's utility. For Anna, the first order condition for utility maximization is the first derivative of her utility with respect to her hours equals 0. We have her best response function, holding the other person's hours fixed. Similarly, we obtain the best response function for Bess. The intersection of the two best response curves determines the Nash equilibrium number of hours they provide. Both provide 22.08 hours. In the second step, we find the socially optimal number of hours to maximize their joint utility. The sum of their utilities is as follows. The problem becomes what choice of hours maximizes their total utility. The partial derivatives with respect to A and B equal 0 respectively. We obtain the socially optimal hours. Both provide 23 hours. The private choice of hours, 22.08, is smaller than the social optimum, 23, indicating the private under-provision of the public good. Let's solve exercise 6.14. Patent trolls are firms that buy patents in the hope of bringing patent infringement lawsuits against major firms rather than producing goods themselves. Recently, 53 firms such as Google, Microsoft, Ford Motor Company, JP Morgan Chase, SolarCity, and Uber have joined the LOT network. These companies control about 360,000 patents. If any fall into the hands of a troll, these companies automatically cross-license the patent to all members so that the troll cannot sue them. LOT executive director says that this program is similar to the herd immunity conferred by vaccines. Moreover, the more companies that join, the more attractive it is for additional companies to join. Explain this reasoning. Like herd immunity, which protects people in the community from infection, firms that have joined the LOT network benefit from being free from lawsuits. The more companies that join, the less likely the patent trolls will sue any members of the LOT network, making it more attractive. Let's adjust exercise 6.15. In solved problem 17.3, suppose that the firms will split the cost of a guard if they both vote to hire one. Show the new payoff matrix. Do they hire a guard? We rewrite the payoff matrix. The change in the payoffs occurs in the upper left cell. If the two stores hire one guard and split the cost of $20, each store's payoff is 6. The first number in the cells is store 2's payoff, and the second is store 1's payoff. We consider store 1's best response. If store 2 hires a guard, store 1 gets 6 if it shares the cost with store 2. However, it gets 16 if it does not hire. It benefits from the guard service without paying for it because the guard service is a public good for the two stores in the mall. Store 1 will choose not to hire, and we underline its payoff 16. If store 2 does not hire a guard, store 1's best response is still not to hire because its payoff is 0, better than -4 if it hires the guard and pays $20. Store 1 has a dominant strategy, which is not to hire a guard. The same reasoning applies to store 2. Store 2 also has a dominant strategy of not hiring a guard. Thus, the Nash equilibrium of the game is for neither store to hire. Even if they can split the cost, they still do not hire a guard because each store wants to free ride, benefiting from the guard service without paying. Let's answer exercise 6.16. People who use Airbnb, a home-sharing platform, to rent apartments often leave reviews, which provides a means of checking the number of times properties are rented. Researchers found that if Airbnb activity increases by 2%, Yelp restaurant reviews in the area rise by 7% and restaurant employment in that neighborhood rises by 3%. This effect demonstrates which economic concepts. Airbnb provides a positive externality to nearby restaurant businesses. As more people use Airbnb, more people visit that area. The restaurants benefit from the increase in tourists without paying for it. The restaurants are free riders. Let's solve exercise 6.17. In 2018, the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention cut 80% of its epidemic prevention activities overseas. The former chief of the CDC says that this decision would significantly increase the chance an Epidemic will spread without our knowledge and endanger lives in our country and around the world. What economic concepts does this story reflect? The epidemic prevention activities are public good. They have a positive externality to people in the United States and worldwide. The project protects vaccinated people overseas. The positive externality also lowers other people's probability of infection, including people in the United States, because people travel. A public good is always underprovided in the market, so the government should subsidize the epidemic prevention activities, or provided by the government. Let's jump to the challenge part of this chapter. Here's exercise 7.1. You draw panel B of the challenge solution figure to show that it is possible for trade to increase welfare even when pollution is not taxed or otherwise regulated. We redraw the graph and analyze it in 3 steps. In the first step, we find the private gain from world trade. The market equilibrium is E1 without world trade. After world trade, the market equilibrium becomes E2. The gain from world trade is the triangle area of A plus B. In the second step, we find the social loss from world trade if a negative externality exists. The social supply SS is the sum of the private supply SP and the externality marginal cost. The increase in output raises the externality cost by the area of B plus C. In the third step, we calculate the net welfare change from world trade. It is A minus C, where A is the blue area and C is the red area. A minus C is positive in the graph. Let's address exercise 7.2. In the challenge solution, if society does not have a pollution problem, how do we know that winners from trade can compensate losers and still have enough left over to benefit themselves? The market equilibrium is E1 without world trade, which is determined by the intersection of the domestic supply curve and the demand curve. The market equilibrium becomes E2 with world trade, which is determined by the intersection of the world price line and the demand curve. We write the consumer surplus, the producer surplus, and the welfare in a table. World trade increases consumer surplus by B plus D plus E. It reduces producer surplus by the area of B. Consumers are winners, and domestic producers are losers. Consumers can transfer the area of B to domestic producers and still benefit from world trade. World trade raises social welfare by D plus E, the triangle area. Thank you so much for watching this video and solving all the exercises with me today. See you soon. Take care. Thank you for watching this video and subscribing to my YouTube channel. See you next time.